How do men heal from pain? How do men heal from trauma? How do men heal from things that gave them PTSD or a home that was a chaotic environment, years and years of abuse, whether that's sexual, physical, mental, and so on? How do men heal? And the fact of the matter is men heal differently than women. Yet over and over again in our culture, men are encouraged to take an effeminized voicing of advice of healing. We hear over and over that this is because of toxic masculinity. We hear over and over that this is because of how you learned to not manage your emotions and how to hide certain parts of yourself. This is terribly damaging when it comes to trauma and pain of anybody. And especially, it's something very unique that men go through. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do men heal from high levels of trauma in a society that doesn't really support it? Welcome, gentlemen. Steve Maeda here, and we just finished up our Rising Man call, our Monday call. We actually have calls on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And if you're in MDX, we have way more calls. And if you're in TSL, we have way more calls. We literally have 30 hours of group calls where you work with myself and work with other experienced members of my groups that have lasted since 2009. And I've been coaching men since 2006. I've been working with them directly around a lot of different problems like this. It's a great place to be if you want to better yourself. So, that being said, I want to get to this because we had 3 guys on the call today, and they just had different areas and starting points, but all led to this thing of trying to work through intense levels of pain in their lives. The first one actually has to do with trauma, having to do with assault, sexual assault towards men. This is something that, man, I've seen a ton of guys work through, especially in the addiction world, and it gets one of the worst voicings almost immediately from people that you tell to, men and women within the culture. And myself, I've experienced some of this, and it's just one of the worst things. And this is what I'm talking about when we have a culture that does not support masculine healing. When somebody says that they've been raped, that they've been molested, that they've been harmed by another person, whether it's a man or a woman, that they grew up sexually abused, that they were drugged and raped, and all of these things happen more than probably you would think. For a man, they're common with guys in my groups. A lot of times it comes out later. You get an answer that is very consistent from the public. Almost immediately, once it gets mentioned, is women have been going through this for years. You have nothing to complain about it. Women have it worse. In fact, one big thing when we get into sexual assault and when even in support groups that men will join about survivors of different sexual assaults, it becomes like a trauma Olympics. All of this is just ridiculous. This is what perhaps women had to go through 20, 30, 50 years ago when they talked about their different problems, and we see that as a society as wrong, or at least most people see that as wrong in our society. And yet we're doing the same thing to men. That whenever a man brings this up, he is shut down because he's had an advantage in the culture and these things aren't really that bad and he should then be able to get over it or somehow power through it. And this is literally some of the best advice that people would get, be giving them. This would be literally the advice that many men got from support groups where this isn't supposed to happen. And in fact, whenever I bring this up to women, they say that they would never say something like that. And if then I talk about certain things that happened in my life that might have to do with rape, that might have to do with incestuous acts, there's certain things that might have to do with something which is, losing custody or those types of things. Almost immediately, it's like, well, you don't have much to complain about. Women, I know a woman who, all this sort of stuff. See, the thing is when men are talking about their pain, they're not telling you to have it be compared to somebody else. They're not telling you to have it be worse or better or whatever than anybody else. They're telling you because they need to talk to somebody about it and feel okay with talking to somebody about it. And what we've done is we've created an environment where that's almost impossible to talk about. It's interesting because when we talk about things like toxic masculinity and men's inability to feel or growing up in ways where they were shamed, and so then it created this hyper masculine culture or whatever, this is exactly what would create that. When you think about this, what options does a man have who has gone through whatever trauma? His options are to bypass it, to repress it, to not talk about it, to give tools that don't work, like just don't think about it or power through it. And then what comes when you put a force of nature in a box, or something that is very powerful, like an emotionally charged thing in a box, is that it then rebels. And this is really, really terrible. I want to talk about this as well because there were guys talking about abuse on the calls, as well as certain things that come about with PTSD. And in fact, with every situation of the three gentlemen talking on the call, there's PTSD involved, is also when men go through something that is very tough, very damaging. Things that you see in war, things like death, things like being around, torture or pain, or seeing that, or being a part of it, or, getting caught up in it. All these things are immediately judged in our culture to a point where a man cannot talk about it. It's really, really sad, and it's really, really tragic when a man who's placed in war might be unprepared for it or whatever, or maybe he was a bully all his life and, did have aggressive tendencies and these types of things. Either way, him having to walk with the pain over killing somebody, or killing somebody and not being able to stop, or going too far, or killing somebody and then killing other people that maybe didn't need to, or seeing that, or then seeing his friends die and so on, and walk with that sort of pain. And when broadcasting it is almost censured or scolded by somebody saying it's too masculine, or that they need to get over it, or they need to find peace, or they need to forgive, without working with people who have truly walked that walk, it's a tragic experience. We are putting problems that real life men have lived, that are seeking solutions, that these guys in my groups are desperately seeking solutions. Usually I'm like the fifth person they come to after being disappointed by everybody. We're putting them in an impossible situation that's based off of a fantasy of what we think healing their problem would be. And that is tragic. And when we do that, we don't create toxic masculinity. We create a crippled culture. We create a culture of broken people are not given an opportunity to better their lives and heal. I hear this over and over again about how people need rights and how people need to, be given certain advantages so that they can get and be and do whatever and have an equal opportunity. And I'm all for those things. But what I hear from myself and what I hear from these men that are actually trying to heal is they don't want a buy from society, but they want an outlet to become strong, who they are, and personal expressions of themselves, so that they can stop being reactions to a world that has shut the door on them because they fought for our country or lived through horrific acts of abuse. And this is one of the saddest things about our culture right now, and the culture and what it's doing to masculinity. It's a true tragedy of what we feel, and if we don't start changing it and making moves towards it, we're gonna have a massive blowback from a culture of men who are in pain, who are forced to continuously feel that pain. Those men will be raising kids, those men will be fathers, they could be husbands, they could be your sons, they could be your grandsons. But eventually they're going to have a massive influence on something, and it cannot be swept under the rug. And one of the greatest lessons that I've learned from these men is none of them ask for a buy in society. They all just ask for an opportunity to be strong enough to be themselves, to express themselves, to get back to who they are after a tough point in their life, which usually was a sacrifice to either this country, their families, their kids, and their ability to do what every man wishes and prays that he can do, which is influence our culture, our society for a better place. Gentlemen, if you're struggling with anything in this area of trauma, PTSD, war, divorce, custody, these things which truly bend your mind and put it in a place where everything seems confused at times, and then maybe other days it feels good. Check out our groups. We're designed for this. We've been doing it for a long time. Man, what we do works. What we do changes men's lives, and we do it in a way that is almost 7 days a week. It's tried, it's trued, and it makes guys stronger. Check out the links down below. I would recommend getting started with the Rising Man if it's something that you're really interested in. Other than that, there's some free PDFs that you can plug into if you want to check out just more of what we do or different videos that I make and so on. I encourage it highly. I only want you working in our groups if you're ready to work, if you're ready to commit, and you're ready to go further down the path of personal excellence, which can be really, really hard and really challenging at times. That being said, I'm going to enjoy the rest of the day and, man, do some writing. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon.